The moment my boss looked up from the file in his hands, his face went completely pale. He stared at the woman sitting across from me, then at me, as if he had just witnessed something impossible. Finally, he whispered, "You've got to be kidding." I had no idea why my boss knew my blind date, or why the woman my best friend had spent weeks insisting was perfect for me had suddenly become the one person capable of changing my entire life. If you enjoy emotional stories about friendship, second chances, unexpected love, and the moments that change everything, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to you. I had never been lucky in love. At 32, I had a stable job, a small apartment, and exactly one person I trusted enough to call my best friend. His name was Daniel, and we'd known each other since college. He had been there when I graduated, when my father passed away, and when my previous relationship ended so badly that I stopped believing love was worth the trouble. Daniel always said I worked too much and lived too cautiously. According to him, I needed someone who could remind me that life wasn't supposed to be nothing but deadlines and responsibilities. So when he told me he wanted to introduce me to his sister, I laughed. I thought he was joking. Daniel had mentioned his sister, Emma, countless times, but I had never met her. She had lived in another city for years, building a career and keeping mostly to herself. Daniel insisted she was kind, intelligent, stubborn in the best way, and terrible at trusting people. He said the two of us were practically made for each other. I refused at first. Then he started sending me photographs of the dinners they had together, stories about her sarcastic sense of humor, and messages saying, "Just meet her once. If you hate each other, I'll never mention it again." Eventually, mostly because I was tired of hearing him ask, I agreed. Our first meeting was at a quiet little cafe on a rainy Thursday evening. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. When Emma walked in, I immediately recognized her from the pictures Daniel had shown me, but the real woman was nothing like the photographs. She looked nervous, almost as nervous as I was. Her hair was damp from the rain, and she apologized for being late even though she was only 3 minutes behind schedule. We started with awkward conversation, but somehow the awkwardness didn't last. She laughed at my terrible coffee order. I made fun of Daniel's obsession with giving unsolicited advice. She told me about her childhood, the dreams she'd once had, and the reason she had moved away from home. I told her things I hadn't told anyone in years. By the time the cafe closed, I realized I had spent 3 hours talking without once checking my phone. For the first time in years, I went home smiling. Over the next few weeks, Emma and I slowly became closer. We didn't rush anything. We walked through parks, shared late-night meals, and sent each other stupid messages during the workday. She had a way of making ordinary moments feel important. When I complained about work, she reminded me that a difficult season wasn't the same thing as a failed life. When I told her I was afraid of getting attached, she simply said that being afraid didn't mean I had to run away. I was beginning to fall for her. Then everything changed. My company announced that our department would be reviewed by the regional director. My boss, Mr. Carter, was known for being demanding but fair. Unfortunately, a major project had gone wrong before I was assigned to it, and the responsibility was slowly being pushed onto my shoulders. For weeks, I worked late, skipped meals, and went home exhausted. One Monday morning, Mr. Carter called me into his office. He placed a thick file on the desk and told me the regional director would be visiting that afternoon. I needed to present the project recovery plan. If it failed, my position could be at risk. I spent the entire morning preparing. At noon, Daniel called me. He sounded unusually excited and reminded me that Emma wanted to see me that evening. I promised I'd be there, but I didn't tell him how terrified I was about the meeting. I didn't want Emma worrying about me. At 2 o'clock, the conference room filled with senior managers. I stood near the presentation screen, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Mr. Carter sat at the head of the table. Beside him was a woman with her back turned toward me, reviewing a folder. Then she looked up. It was Emma. For a second, I couldn't breathe. She stared at me with the same shock in her eyes. Mr. Carter looked between us, completely confused. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got to be kidding. I thought my life had just fallen apart." Emma wasn't simply an employee at another company. She was the regional director responsible for reviewing our department. She had never told me. I had never told her about my boss or the project because I didn't want our personal relationship mixed with work. But suddenly, everything looked suspicious. Mr. Carter asked if we knew each other. Emma calmly admitted that we were seeing each other. The room became painfully silent. I could almost hear everyone wondering whether I'd been given special treatment. I immediately offered to step away from the presentation. Emma refused. She said she was there to evaluate the work, not my personal life. For the next 40 minutes, I presented everything. I explained what had gone wrong, what I had personally done to repair it, and what still needed to be fixed. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't defend myself with excuses. I simply told the truth. When I finished, Emma thanked me professionally. Then she left the room. I expected the worst. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my phone. Emma hadn't called. Daniel hadn't called. My mind filled with terrible possibilities. Maybe Emma thought I'd deliberately hidden the truth. Maybe she believed I'd used our relationship to protect my job. Maybe the entire beautiful beginning we'd shared had been ruined in a single afternoon. Around midnight, someone knocked on my door. It was Emma. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red, as though she'd been crying. She told me the truth I had never known. Years earlier, she had worked for the same company and had been unfairly blamed for a failed project. She had left because she couldn't stand watching people sacrifice honest employees to protect powerful managers. She had spent years rebuilding her career. That was why she had become so careful about separating her personal life from her professional responsibilities. She looked at me and said that during the presentation, she hadn't seen the man she'd been dating. She had seen the hard-working person she'd come to admire. And she wanted me to know that she had never once believed I was using her. Then came the surprise. She told me that the review had revealed something much bigger than my project. Someone else had deliberately altered financial records to make my department look responsible for losses. My work had actually uncovered the mistake, and because I had documented everything honestly, the company was now able to identify who had caused it. I hadn't failed. I had unknowingly saved the department. Mr. Carter later apologized for doubting me and offered me a promotion. But the promotion wasn't what mattered most. The next morning, Daniel showed up at my apartment laughing and shaking his head. He admitted that he had known Emma was visiting the company but had never imagined we'd meet in such a dramatic way. He said he had only wanted his two favorite people to meet. I looked at him and realized something. Sometimes the people who enter our lives don't arrive when everything is perfect. Sometimes they arrive when we're exhausted, afraid, and convinced that nothing good is waiting for us anymore. And sometimes the person who seems like a risk becomes the reason we finally learn to trust again. Months later, Emma and I returned to that same cafe where we had first met. Rain tapped softly against the window. She reached across the table and held my hand. I realized that the greatest surprise hadn't been discovering who she was at work. It had been discovering who I could become when someone believed in me. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who may need a little hope today, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Sometimes one small act of kindness, one unexpected meeting, or one second chance can change an entire life. And before you go, comment, "I believe in second chances," if you believe that the right people can find us even when life seems determined to keep us apart. Because sometimes, What looks like the worst possible coincidence is actually life quietly opening a door we were never brave enough to knock on.